I'm Ben, welcome to my book corner, and today is another tag video. This is the BookisH Elements tag. Seen this doing the rounds for a little bit. I was recently tagged in this by the amazing Cat over at Ginger Bibliophile, and I believe this was originally created by Sarah over at My Granny Era. 8 tags plus a tag people one at the end. So let's see. I've not actually read the questions for this. I watched the video that Kat did like a week ago, and I have a memory like a sieve. So let's dive in. Number 1, how do you feel about foreshadowing or dropping hints? I love foreshadowing, especially if it's a book that I'm going to reread. An example of this that's really, really smart with it is Wheel of Time, and you don't realise the foreshadowing until you get later on in the book and it clicks. And then once you do the reread, you'll realise how much there was actually there that you still had forgotten about. I don't like it when a book uses too many red herrings, however. Some thrillers are quite like this. Riley Sager seems to be especially egregious for just throwing red herring after red herring after red herring at you, which kind of cheapens any twist. But I do like a couple of little nods, and I see this a lot in the fantasy books that I read as well. So I think it's good. I don't like a twist that comes out of the blue unless there's a obvious reason why you won't be able to pick it. Number 2, bookmarks. What do you use, and how do you feel about bending corners down? I am a prolific corner folder on books. Only my own, but I don't really get library books, so there's no great surprise there. I always have been, always will be. I do have bookmarks. 9 times out of 10, I don't have them anywhere near me when I'm reading a book, which means I just fold the page. I am getting better, and 9 times out of 10, I do the incredibly chaotic thing of just remembering what page I'm on. Or I just check my Goodreads, as a rule of thumb. I should probably use bookmarks. There's some very pretty bookmarks out there. And people I know have bought me bookmarks. But I am a heathen, so there we go. Forgotten bookmarks. Have you ever found something strange used as a bookmark? I haven't. I know some people use receipts, or crisp packets is a weird one because you think that'd stain a page potentially with grease. But not really. The worst thing I can think of is if someone was to tear a page out of another book and use that as a bookmark in another book, which I've no doubt some horrible person has done at some point. So there we go. Number 4, annotations and inscriptions. How do you feel about writing in a book, and how do you annotate if you do? So I don't note take, which can occasionally cause problems. But when I'm reading, I like to be so immersed in the story that I don't like to take the time out to make notes particularly. So I rely on my own memory of how things go. And generally speaking, I do all right. The only stuff I normally need to sort of go back and double check is place and character names, and even then I sometimes still get them wrong. I have no problem with people who do annotate. The other thing as well is my handwriting looks like if a doctor was a drunken spider and ran through an inkwell and then ran over a page. I can't read my notes at the best of times. So me trying to read them in a book feels like a terrible, terrible thing. Now, I do add notes on my Kindle, and I do highlight on there as well. I do quite like the functionality of that. Well, that's because I could just fetch up all the notes on the side of the screen and just scan through them. So there we go. Annotating is not for me personally. Introductions and footnotes. Do you read or avoid them, or what makes a good introduction? Depends what you mean by introduction, because quite often an introduction to a story will be a scene set a period of time before that story, or sometimes a period of time after. I don't mind as long as it makes sense within the context of the story. For example, Wheel of Time again has, in some versions, not all, does have an introduction passage set a few years before. Called Ravens, which is not in every version of the book as well, just on a side point. And that actually does a good job of just highlighting what life is like before everything happens. And sometimes it can add a bit of context. It can work really well for foreshadowing as well, or giving a view of some cataclysmic event that happens in the story without giving details. A book that did that really well was 13 that I read recently, by is it HD Ferdowsi? That's just come into my head and I can't think. F is down there, right? H Ferdowsi, sorry, I added an extra letter in there. So there you go. I don't mind introductions. In terms of footnotes, I actually don't mind footnotes. My favourite author is Pratchett, who is famed for, first of all, not writing in chapters, and secondly, footnotes. And actually, they can be really, really useful sometimes. And I've read books in the past where they felt the need to include information in the main passage of the text, which kind of breaks the writing flow a little bit and becomes a bit exposition heavy. Whereas a footnote, a quick flip away and glance and back up, I think works better, but it does depend on how it's used. Accessories. Do you use bookish accessories like reading lights, book stands, and book sleeves? No. I just turn a light on. I'm not. I just give me a book and let me read it. Yeah, book sleeves actually kind of make sense to move books around, but generally speaking, if I'm reading when I'm not at home, it'll be on my Kindle rather than a physical book, as a rule of thumb. And I don't use reading lights or anything like that. Kindle's an accessory, I suppose. I do need a cover for that at some point, but past that, not really. Number 7, art and illustrations. How do cover art and illustrations affect your reading experience? First off, that's what quite often causes me to buy books, because I do cover buy really, really strongly. And it does depend on the cover art of the book, because sometimes there's some great foreshadowing, again linking back to number 1, in cover art of the book, and there's certain themes that become more obvious as you read through that you can refer back to the cover art. I do like illustrations if they're used properly and they fit the tone of the book, or they are an exact juxtaposition of the tone of the book, and acting as like an opposite to kind of show the difference, so to speak. Maps, however, is another thing. Every fantasy book should have a map. It should be the law. Maps make everything better. Even if it's just like a vague, almost like scribbled on a napkin style map, which you could then explain that that's the map that someone's walking around with. That can add so much just in terms of world building to get an idea of sense of scale of the world potentially. Format. What formats do you prefer? Do you do different things for different situations? I do prefer physical books. I always have, but I don't mind ebooks. I prefer them on an e-reader. I don't like reading on my phone or on the computer specifically. I will do sometimes because occasionally when you get arcs, the formatting goes a bit awry in different places and works better on one bit than the other. But I do prefer physical reads. I don't mind audio. I need to be in the mood for audio. I need to like the narrator as well, just on a side point. But give me a physical book, because once you've read it, you can put it on your shelf and it'll look pretty. And that's the 8 prompts. So number 9 is tag some people. So if you haven't done this tag already, please consider yourself tagged. And if you do, after watching this video, decide to do this one, please tag me so I can come and watch and see what answers you have for the Bookish Elements tag. Well, that's it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please consider giving it a like and a thumbs up. No, a thumbs up and a comment down below letting me know some of your answers to this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all next time.